I I would like to welcome the so I'd like to welcome Andy Ryan. So who's like a multi-skilled person working in like different fields like musician, photography, film, shows. So I always like to start off with just like kind of like our musical journey.
Yeah, music has always been a big part of my life. From listening to music and enjoying music to learning to play instruments and eventually performing with instruments.
Yeah.
It's always been a big part of me. Um, some of my earliest influences that truly allowed me to fall in love with music were Neil Diamond, The Beatles, Queen, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Black Sabbath, Rush. Those probably those in that whole category were the bands that truly allowed me to fall in love with music. And I started with keyboards when I think I was around 7 or 8 years old when I first started playing the keys and just, touching them and learning what they sounded like. I eventually picked up guitar around that same time, maybe around age 8. I started playing guitar a little bit. And I knew right away that I liked both of those, but then there was something that I discovered about a year later, and that was what ended up kind of being the dominant instrument for a very long time for me, and that was the drums. I started playing drums when I was about 9, and I was really inspired, particularly by John Bonham and Roger Taylor. I really, especially Queen. I was a huge Queen fan. Some of the first things I did while playing drums were playing Queen songs. I had the Live at Wembley Stadium DVD, and I used to play half of that at a time on the drums. And that was a big one for me. Black Sabbath is another one. I had a friend in elementary school named Adam who very talented guitar player. He was really good at playing some of those parts from those Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath songs, and also Deep Purple. That was another one. He introduced me to Deep Purple. And he actually also introduced me to Black Sabbath. We would play those songs together. We would practice stuff. Even I remember in the fifth grade talent show, we did Heartbreaker by Led Zeppelin. And so that was what was kind of normal for me musically, was all those songs. Rush was another big one. I always wanted to learn how to play Rush songs on the drums. Wasn't so easy in the beginning, but that was something I definitely practiced on. I ended up getting okay at a couple Rush songs later on. Tom Sawyer and La Via Strangiato are two songs I like to play
Yeah.
on drums. Anyway, so that was the start of my musical journey. And then flash forward a bunch of years later, I got into filmmaking, and that kind of became the start of my career, filmmaking and photography. And I've always loved music, but music was not something I tried to build a career on when I first got started. So I focused on really camera work and lighting. That's what got me into doing all that stuff when I was a teenager and a young adult. I got into filmmaking and that all that. And then around 2018, 2019, I started to get really back into music, and I started to record and write my own music. And then a couple years later, I joined a band, and for the past couple years, I've been playing bass in a band where I live currently. And we play a bunch of classic rock songs. We also play like 80s and 90s alternative. We play some stuff from the 2000s, a good mixture of stuff, some country, some funk, but mostly classic rock. And it feels like being home every time I play all those songs. Yeah, so that's a little bit about the music side of me. And I know that we have a lot in common as far as some of those artists. I've always wanted to know what was your introduction to the music that you love?
Like it like all the music that I grew up listening to that I still listen to is like through my parents, through my siblings, like so it's like this various so it's like bands like Zeppelin, uh Def Leppard to like Beatles to and then like later stuff more like Linkin Park or like TLC or like Beyonce. Like it's this is like all over the place. Like and kind of like one of my earliest memories is kind of like well two, but like listening to a lot of like James Taylor, like or on the weekends, like while making breakfast. But another one of my like earliest memories that I can like still visually remember is watching Michael Jackson's Thriller video.
Such an iconic music
Yeah,
video.
I probably saw that when I was like probably like five.
Yeah.
And like I always like grew up listening. There was always music around the house in some way or another. Like it didn't. I was probably maybe like 12 or so when I actually started to like play instruments. So it, was, like, it originally started with guitar, like, and then probably shortly after that, like one of my biggest influences that definitely got me into drums was definitely Bonham. So it's like, and especially like the way that he does all those like triplets, and that like that just always like somehow amazed me, and like it made me like want to like learn.
Yeah, the triplets on what, oh gosh, what solo is
Uh,
it? Down,
uh,
down, 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 down.
the first one that came to mind was Good Times, Bad Times.
Good time. Yeah, yeah. The triplets that he does before that, the fill into that, that's always been one of my favorites. The other big Bonham one for me was Moby Dick.
Yeah,
That's a piece of art right there.
yeah. And then it probably started like kind of like another thing that I know like we share in common is definitely like not necessarily like film, but like photography and stuff. But like it probably started like right at the tail end of 2017 to like early 2018 is when I started to like get into photography. Like I like there was always like some sort of like creative flow in my brain that like was there, but I didn't know like where to like put that. But then which eventually like led to photography because for some reason like I always had a like an eye for like finding like the right moments.
Yeah, it's this thing with photography where you realize how much of it is happening subconsciously.
Yeah,
Like when you're taking photos, you're not necessarily saying things like, okay, the light has to be this way and we have to make sure we're aiming this way and we're setting it this way and we're doing this and that. It's kind of just like it, it looks good, right? Like
yeah,
I'm gonna shoot this way because it looks pretty. And
yeah,
and it's all these things you're thinking of. That's being an artist right there. I always, one thing that I love about photography is there's rules to follow. There's lots of rules that you can learn. Like if you ever study photography or you read a book on photography or something like that, there's all sorts of things like the rule of thirds, things that are designed to help you, stay focused on like a certain way of framing a shot or following rules because that's how you make a good image. One of the coolest things about photography is you can break all those rules.
yeah,
You can do whatever you want because it's art. there's
yeah,
there's no rules to art. The only thing is if you think it looks good, then it looks good.
yeah. Like there's like definitely like a lot of things that I've learned, but like I've always kind of like twisted those rules to like fit that situation.
Totally. Yeah, I just printed an image the other day that breaks a bunch of those rules where there's something in the dead center of the image where usually you're told don't put something in the center, put it off to the side a little bit, but every now and again it works to break those rules. I love it. So that's cool. And so you got into photography almost 10 years ago now. Well, I guess
Uh,
8 years, 2017, 28.
almost. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, so I know you like live event photography and you also do a bit of portraiture, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. I got into live event photography and actually live event video got me into that initially and then eventually photography afterwards. There's a lot of really cool things with live event photography. I feel because you're not like it's very different than if you have a photo shoot with a model, right? Because if you have
Yeah.
someone who you're directing and you're posing, okay, stand here, look this way, okay, lower your chin a little bit, now turn your head. There's all those things you can do with models. But
Yeah.
when you're doing a live event, if it's a band on stage or someone talking on stage, it's all about where can I shoot from? How do I not get in these people's way because they're all in the audience, right? How
Like
do I
it
still get a
definitely,
good shot?
like it definitely is like more raw.
Yeah.
Definitely like more like in the moment type thing.
Yeah. So I find when I take pictures of events, I end up having to go through a lot more images and, you know, sometimes deleting some of the out of focus ones or the ones where I was waiting for the person to move this way, but I had to keep shooting and waiting and they every time I wanted them to move this way, they moved like this instead. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh yeah, and performers on stage can sometimes move very fast and unexpectedly. All sorts of things can happen during concerts. Sometimes the singer jumps into the photo pit and wants to talk to a fan directly in the front row, and sometimes they do that and it's all dark, and
Yeah.
you have to quickly change the way your camera's set so you can get a good shot, and then
Yeah.
when they jump back on stage and you have to, yeah, it can be crazy. What's your favorite event you've ever shot?
Um, uh, Kind of like these two come to mind. Um, the first one is a band called it's also a band called Messengers. It's
Okay.
actually like a band from Ireland, and I was able to get some good pictures. Like it was actually my first concert back after everything like shut down.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So that was 2021, and I was able to get like some like great pictures, like the lead singer like interacting with a fan,
That's really cool.
and the other one is and this was actually my first one that I ever did, and it was 2018, which and the artist is Jeremy Camp.
I remember there was one photo you shared with me. It looked like it was at the Mid-State California Mid-State Fair.
Yeah,
Was that the one?
yeah.
Okay.
Like the singer was like kneeling down on the stage, like and then holding like the person's hand.
Yeah, that's a great shot. I like that a lot. Very cool. Yeah, it's cool because those sorts of moments happen.
Yeah,
Unexpected moments like that. And that's the you can look at that photo and it can tell a pretty big story just with that one photo.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm excited to definitely shoot an event together in the future.
yeah. And definitely like looking forward to like doing stuff more stuff like like especially like working out like at a future a good karma.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, you'll be the what we call the house photographer or the
Yeah,
staff photographer. You'll provide the official images
yeah,
for the entire event. That's going to be pretty cool. And I can tell you, because I know you were at the last Good Karma, we're gonna have a pretty cool stage
yeah,
for the next one. It's still not gonna be for a little while, but
yeah,
big stage, we're gonna have some cool lights and all that, so it'll make for some really good photos.
yeah. Like to kind of piggyback off of this, no matter if it's like working at a concert or like a venue, or if it's just more of like from a fan perspective, like do you have any like great moments that like you always look back on?
As a fan at a concert,
Yeah,
yeah. One, there's a few that come to mind, but I'll give you one. It's for an artist who's fairly well known in the progressive rock community, but probably not a household name outside of that. His name's Steven Wilson, and he has a band called Porcupine Tree. I'm a really
yeah,
big fan. I went back in 2015. Oh my gosh, it's been 10 years already. 2015, I was planning a trip to go to Europe, and that happened to be my 21st birthday that year when I turned 2015. I turned 21 in 2015. Sorry. So that was a mouthful. And it turned out Steven Wilson, one of my favorite artists, was having a 2-night back-to-back concert at the Royal Albert Hall, which is a very famous venue there in London. And I was excited. I was already planning on being there uh, during that time. I was going to be in the Netherlands, which is pretty close. So I ended up adding London and the UK to my trip so I could go to that. Anyway, so I ended up being there. It was on my birthday, my 21st birthday, which of course it's ironic to be turning 21 in Europe because the drinking age there is 18. So it's not like this big, like, oh my gosh, you can now it's legal to drink. It was, I mean, of course it was cool to me. Not that I'm a huge drinker. I don't like to get super drunk, but it's nice to have a beer or two at a show, right?
yeah,
So anyway, 21st birthday, I'm at the Royal Albert Hall, and I ended up just buying a cheap ticket because it was pretty expensive. I got a nosebleed ticket. So it's like, okay. And I was excited to get there. I got there early because I had always wanted to see the Royal Albert Hall. It's this famous venue. It's on the it's there's a bunch of like live albums recorded there, and you'll see that venue on the cover of the album. And there's even some live concert film shot there. It's a cool place. So I just wanted to get there early and walk around. So I got to the venue, and I'm walking around, and I'm in the upper area waiting for them to open the doors to the theater itself. And all of a sudden, I don't know if she was a promoter or if she was with the band, just walking around, and she was giving out free tickets for people that were sitting up there. And she said, "Hey, we have extra seats that are down really close to the stage. Here you go." And so all of a sudden, I got a free. It wasn't front row, but it was very, very close to the stage. It was hundreds of dollars more expensive than what I had paid. Uh, that was a pretty cool story. And then of course I got to experience it, right there in front of me, because when you're far away at a stadium show or an arena show, it's a totally different experience than being close up. So anyway, that was one that came to mind. I'll give you one more story. This one I feel a little guilty about, but it's still made for a great experience, and it's actually kind of similar. I was seeing Rush at the Universal Gibson Amphitheater, and it was my first time seeing Rush. I've seen them. I got to see them twice. I'm very fortunate. Um, and this was on the Time Machine tour, which was the first leg of, I believe, the first leg of that whole tour they did in 2000. I want to say 2009, 2010.
It was actually like a 2 year tour, so it was 10 and 11.
10. Okay, because I went to both legs of it. They ended up going back to that same venue when it was the Clockwork Angels tour,
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah. The the so the first time it was I had been a fan of Rush my entire life, and finally the opportunity had come for me to see them live, which was exciting. And we not only was I in the nosebleeds, I was in the very back row, like the actual back row where your back is the wall. And Have you ever been to that venue? It's no longer
Uh,
there, unfortunately.
I actually have been there twice.
Okay. It's not it's not gigantic. Even if you're in the back row, it's
Yeah,
still a pretty good seat,
yeah,
but it's still far away. And to rush, you wouldn't be that close.
yeah.
So anyway, saw the first half of the show back there, and then I think I posted on Facebook my view, and then turns out one of my friends was there probably 10 rows from the front of the stage. And he said, my seat is the closest seat to the aisle. Come down during intermission and just stand next to me. We'll squeeze in. And sure enough, I went down there, and so I got to watch the second half of the show pretty close. That, and as a fan, that was very valuable.
Yeah,
Those are two like totally lucky opportunities I just gave examples of.
yeah,
Yeah, I could give you count. I mean, I've been to a lot of shows. I love spending my money on concert tickets because you get to support the artist. If you think of it from a business standpoint, that's one of the best ways artists can make money
yeah,
is selling concert tickets. And merchandise sales at concerts helps a lot too, but it's that pays a lot more typically than how much they're making selling records or with streaming and all that. So I love going to shows. There's even been times I've bought tickets to shows I knew I couldn't make it to, just so I could always buy a ticket to support the band, if it's a band I really really liked. But yeah, over the years I've had a lot of good experiences. I always find myself being wowed by the lights and the sound quality and all of that. I love it, and I love traveling to concerts too.
um like I kind of also have like two. So like the first one was I went to go to a show at the Wiltern.
Okay.
It was back in March. No, yeah, March of 2023. I went. It was three acts. So it was Saint Sonia, which was started by the singer of 3 Days Grace.
Hmm.
So it was them. Then it was Skillet, and then it was a a, a theory of a dead man.
Oh, cool.
Like I paid a little bit extra to get those like really good seats, but because where I was in that whole area, there was no seated. It was just a standing area, so I was able to
Oh, got it. Got it.
get like there's that fence like between like the fans and like the stage, so it was like right there,
The
and
barricade. Cool.
I was wearing a so I was wearing a so I was I think what would be stage left, and, and I was wearing a Cincinnati Bengals hat because the lead guitarist of Skillet is from Cincinnati.
Oh, okay.
So when they came out to perform their first song, he saw me wearing my hat and he like gave like a good wave. And then
That's cool.
after they did like their set, actually threw out a pick and I was able to grab it.
Very cool.
And kind of like another one that popped up in my mind was it happened just a little over a year ago. I was doing some event that was part of the LA County, like the LA County Regional Center.
Mhm.
It was like some like big like award thing. It was at like a hotel, and I walked in the lobby and I saw it. I ran into and met the lead singer of Shinedown.
Oh, very
It was
cool.
like just by chance.
That's cool. That's really cool. I think I remember did you get a picture with him?
Yeah,
That's cool. That Yeah, it's sometimes just those chance meetings, they happen out of nowhere and they can be a really cool experience.
but like when that happened, like it took me a few moments to like process that. Like it definitely took a few moments. So like, is that really him? But like one thing that definitely gave it away is that he actually has like a tattoo like on his like kind of in the shoulder neck area. And I'm like, that's him. And like when I went to go up and meet him, I was like shaking.
That's really cool. Yeah, tattoo. That's a easy way to find out if it's really the person
Yeah.
or just a lookalike. That's awesome. It was in. Were they performing nearby? Did you see them perform, or he just happened to be there?
I'm not sure why he was there, but like it must have been some sort of like event or like maybe just like passing through for some reason.
I see. Oh, even more rare then.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Um,
You know, I've always wanted to ask you something totally. This is totally random, but it actually goes back to we were talking about music earlier
yeah,
and playing instruments and stuff. You're a drummer.
yeah.
When did you start playing drums?
So it might have been like I was probably about maybe like probably about like 13.
Okay, pretty cool. That kit you have currently is really nice.
Yeah.
Is that all Badger drums or just the snare?
Uh, just the snare.
Got it. What brand is the rest of the kit?
So the kit itself is like so it's made by SJC.
Oh, okay. I love the gold hardware with that.
Yeah,
I don't know if you call it teal or seafoam green, but it's a really
yeah,
nice color. That's cool. Um, I love drumming. It's one of my favorite things to do, and of course, I can't always be as loud as I want to be.
yeah,
You know what I mean? But when if I'm ever playing quiet or something or playing muffled, I always just kind of close my eyes and picture where I would be
yeah.
playing those drums if I could just go as loud as hard as I want. What when you close your eyes and you're playing your drums, or if you were to think about that, what would be your like favorite location to be in? Would it be like in a studio or on stage, or would it be like in nature or something like that?
It probably would be at like some like outside venue. Like not necessarily like something like the Hollywood Bowl, but like definitely something that like that I can always like look back on.
That'd be a pretty cool view.
Yeah,
Yeah, I kind of go between like, would it be in front of a huge crowd or would it be just with myself? You know what I mean? Because it can be fun either way to share music with a bunch of people or just to play it with yourself.
yeah,
Well, that's cool. I was just curious about that.
yeah,
Yeah, I love drums. But you use Zildjian cymbals, right?
yeah.
Okay, that's cool. My first drum kit was electronic, and I ended up upgrading it a little bit as I started to get better with drums and started to learn what all the because you know how when you get started with drums, it's all about focusing on just being on time and kind of the
Yeah.
basic. As you get more advanced, you start to learn about all the subtle things you can do, with your sticks and the things you can do with the cymbals. Like if you're playing and then you want to like mute the cymbal really quickly and grab it. There's all those things you learn about. And sometimes, especially on cheaper electronic kits, they don't really you can't always do all those things, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Uh like if you want to mute the symbol, you have to like grab and press a button or something underneath it. So that was what I quickly learned as I started drumming was I started to realize those limitations and then I think I got, the V drum mesh pads they make. I ended up getting that for the snare. And that made it way more realistic because then on the mesh you can practice rolls and it feels more like playing a snare drum. So I did that for a while and then eventually my parents helped me when I was probably 11 or 12 helped me trade it to a they found a used pearl kit on eBay, and that's what I ended up that was my first real drum kit, was a pearl. And I still have one piece of that because my I only ended up getting one other drum set ever, and the one that I have now is a Gretsch kit, but it's a Gretsch 4-piece kit, and I really like having 2 rack toms. So I still have one of the pearl rack toms. It's a totally different color, but it sounds good.
Like when I started on drums, it definitely was like very like similar. Like I started on like one of those like cheap electronic kits. I think it might have been like Alesis, like
Mm.
maybe like one of those ones that cost maybe like 300, $400, like right around there. And then eventually like slowly got better. And then I actually got one of those like travel kits, like those like it's those kits that have like the shallow shells.
Yeah.
And it was actually also a pearl.
Okay.
And it also had like the symbols as well, but it actually had mesh. It actually came with both just like the standard heads as well as mesh heads.
I see. That's cool. I've seen those played on before. I've never played one myself.
Yeah,
They can sound pretty cool for certain stuff.
yeah.
I remember one time I saw a jazz group play and the drummer was using that. It sounded really good.
It's actually and this is actually one drummer that I actually had the chance to meet. So it's so his name is Daru Jones, who plays for Jack White.
Hmm?
And especially like his toms, especially like his ragtime or like the shallow.
Oh, oh, and what my understanding is the more shallow the toms, the less of a resonance. Like it has less of a note or an overtone, right?
Yeah,
And it ends up
yeah,
sounding more like dry and kind of
yeah. But like
interesting.
if you look at his setup, it's definitely like more on the shallow side of things.
Okay.
And especially with a lot of the music that he plays, it's a lot of like funk or like kind of like in that style.
Yeah. That genre definitely works with those sorts of drums. I notice a lot of funk drummers will do things like putting a towel over the snare drum,
Yeah,
and or sometimes I see drummers, I'm sure you've seen this, or you probably do this yourself, taking your wallet and putting it
yeah,
dropping it on the snare drum, and then it
yeah,
somehow makes it sound better. My recent Badger snare drum that I just got a couple weeks ago sounds really good with my wallet on top of it.
yeah,
I have one of those plastic rings,
yeah,
that you can put over it that also helps remove some of the overtones. And that one sounds good on a different snare that I have. I have a pearl brass snare, and that one it sounds really good. But on the Badger snare, uh, because it's such a big, because it's 14 by 7, it's a huge snare drum. It naturally has like a ding every time you hit it. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Um, and putting that plastic thing on it takes too much of that away. It makes it go
yeah.
like so. Putting I found this is the good balance. And then one time, here's a quick story. One time I was recording drums for something I was recording. I was at my friend's studio. My friend Slater has this pretty cool recording studio in Oregon, in Portland, Oregon. And he had just finished building it. He was actually he had me there to take some photos of the studio because he had this like world-class studio designer come in and design like the angles of everything and install it all. And he also got a pretty cool custom drum kit for the studio from a local company in Portland. And so part of the deal was if I take photos for him and help him dial in the studio, he'll let me record some stuff for free. So we had this arrangement, and we spent the whole first day just dialing in the drum set. He was positioned, he was like practicing with microphones, like putting them in different areas and seeing how it sounded. And we spent like 8 hours doing that. And we ended up we spent a lot of time trying to get the snare sound right. uh Different microphones, different placements and stuff, and nothing was sounding right. And then eventually I suggested, let me put my wallet on the snare drum, and immediately it sounded perfect. And he was like, oh, perfect, it sounds great. And then I was like, okay, cool, okay, we got it sounding good, let's leave it the way it is, let's go sleep because it's late. Tomorrow we'll start recording the music, and now we know how we want it all set up. And so we went, and then the next day we went to record, and I forgot to put the wallet on the snare. And we started recording, and I think he didn't want to say anything. He couldn't figure out why it wasn't sounding good. And we both forgot about the wallet. And so we ended up recording the whole day. And then it was only at the end of the day, we did 4 songs. And it was only on the fourth song where I just remembered, oh yeah, the wallet. And then all of a sudden he was like, it sounds way different all of a sudden. What changed? And I was like, whoops. Yeah, it's funny the things that we do to make things sound good.
I actually just I saw this on a like some sort of like ad. It was like some sort of like a ad on Instagram, but I can't remember the company name, but it's it's a wallet that can also be used as a like a snare weight, but it can also has like little suction cups on one side, on the other side it's all rubber, so you can use it as like a pad.
That's cool.
Yeah,
So it doesn't slide around.
yeah.
Yeah, because that's the problem, is the eventually it falls off.
And I think there was a magnet on the side that to where it'll essentially like connect to the rim.
Got it. Oh, very cool. But
Yeah,
it's still a wallet.
yeah,
That's cool. That's really cool. And there's also some people like moon bells.
yeah.
You ever use those?
Us sometimes.
I never found the use for them personally. Another thing you can do is put gaffer's tape or
Yeah,
even like duct tape over parts of it. Of course, that changes the look of it. You don't want to cover that pretty Remo logo.
yeah,
The drummer in my band, he likes to use moon gels, but he doesn't like to spend money on them because they're kind of expensive.
yeah,
And eventually they like get rubbed around and they get all this dust on them. Eventually, they don't stick anymore, right? And you have to replace them.
yeah.
And my band plays usually 2 times a week, sometimes even 3 times a week. And so our drummer, he's constantly bringing his kit everywhere. I think he leaves it in his car, just leaves it in his trunk, and just, you know what I mean. Um, and because he doesn't like to spend money on moon gels, he found his solution is, I don't know where he buys them, like at Party City or something. These like kids
Yeah,
animal shaped little sticky things that you can put on windows.
yeah. Like I am like really familiar with that trick. Like instead of having to pay like $20 for like 4 moon gels, you can go to like those a like a grocery store or something and like spend like $2
Yeah,
on that little thing.
yeah, they don't stick as well though. That's the problem. So every gig he's like, okay, am I gonna put giraffe or starfish? Or he's always picking one, or he'll have to put like 2 or 3 on there.
Yeah,
But it kind of looks cool because he has those the black drum heads
yeah.
on his kit, and so those colorful animal shapes kind of look cool on the black. Yeah, he started doing that last year.
Um, kind of like who has been some of like your biggest like kind of like your biggest like influences that kind of like helped shape.
I've had a lot of influences. I've had a few mentors who I've worked with directly or I've known personally who have helped shape the way for me. And then there's also been a lot of people I look up to who are, either famous musicians or other people, other professionals. And because I do a lot of different things, I do music, I do film, I do photography, and I found that I kind of have mentors and people I look up to in each of those categories. So specifically for music, there's a few. Or I mentioned earlier my friend I had in elementary school named Adam. He was a pretty big source of inspiration for me, even though we were the same age. He was very influenced by his dad, who is a guitar player, and I think particularly into Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath. So I had this pretty early influence of a friend of mine who was really pushing Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and also Deep Purple on me. And I think because that particular friend and his dad who was inspiring him, they were both so into that and so passionate about that music that it rubbed off on me. Like here are these people that are so into this music, like they love to know about, all sorts of facts about Ozzy Osbourne and Jimmy Page, and right, knowing all those cool things. Like how you hear stories from these bands about like stuff on the tour bus and stuff
Yeah.
backstage. Like we used to just talk and have fun talking about those stories that we would read about and stuff. That was a big inspiration for me. Flash forward to about 10, 11 years ago, another big one for me was I had a filmmaker who I worked for. He was my boss for a couple years, and he was a big inspiration for me. Up until that point, my understanding of quote unquote progressive rock was like I knew Rush. I knew Rush was a progressive rock band, and I knew of like Coheed and Cambria,
Yeah.
but I didn't know too much else. I think bands like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, they're really good bands, but they're not necessarily considered progressive rock.
Yeah.
They're, you know what I mean? Progressive rock bands tend to be more of the, longer songs. They
Yeah.
change time signatures, they change tempos. Oh, Pink Floyd, that's another one. Pink Floyd, I was actually introduced to very early on. Of course, I only knew a few Pink Floyd songs. I only knew stuff from The Wall. It wasn't until later on I started to discover the whole other rest of Pink Floyd. You know what I mean? We could talk about Pink Floyd if you want, but anyway, as far as progressive rock goes, I only really knew Rush and Coheed and a little bit of Pink Floyd. But then around 2012, 2013, I started working with this individual named David Robin. He was my boss, filmmaker. He is unfortunately since passed away. And I really miss talking to him because he was a huge source of inspiration for learning about a lot of other bands. He introduced me to progressive rock in a very big way. Starting with I mentioned Steven Wilson earlier, but also getting into all the classic progressive rock like Yes, Genesis, King Crimson, Jethro Tull, discovering more Rush, because I actually there was still some Rush I hadn't discovered yet, like Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres. So all that got introduced to me uh, about a little bit over 10 years ago now. And so that I consider that like a big milestone in my musical journey, because I started to become aware of all this other music that really I really liked. I really like those kind of complex songs with the big vocal harmonies and the big solos and the big drum fills, all that. And suddenly you can have this like big complex part of a song and then it gets really quiet and slow and then it builds itself back up. And I love that. I love songs that are like 30 minutes long, like really long songs. Anyway, so yeah, I would credit those two individuals particularly as being inspirations for me. uh More recently, in the last 2 to 3 years, another big one for me has been learning about Frank Zappa. And I've started to really study Frank Zappa's music, and I just actually learned my first Frank Zappa song that I'm going to be performing with a band next month. We're doing a song called "Echidna's Arf of You," which is it's in probably no less than 20 different time signatures throughout the 4 minute song, including stuff like 3/16, 6/16, 8/16, like some pretty interesting time signatures. Frank Zappa, he passed away in 1993, but he was active from the mid 60s up until the early 90s. Uh, and he employed a lot of musicians during his time. I know you've met one of them, one of the very prominent ones that was one of his
Yeah,
drummers.
yeah,
Oh, and I want to know more about meeting Terry Bozzio. I would love for you to tell me about that.
yeah,
But ever since I discovered Frank's music, it's really been an inspiration for me because of how diverse his music is. If you listen to Frank Zappa's catalog, he goes all the way from doo-wop and classic R&B to pretty intense classical music, to jazz, to rock and roll, uh, even more stuff in between. But it's a pretty big catalog, and had a very, very disciplined way, the way he approached music. And I've the past couple of years, that started to rub off on me in some ways. So I'll leave it at that to answer your question. There was kind of the early inspiration for me, and then there was about 10 years ago when I really got schooled on prog, and then Frank Zappa a couple years ago. Now I'm
yeah,
starting to have this really big balanced overview of music now. What
yeah.
about you?
Like definitely, like one of them definitely is my uncle. Like he, so yeah, he actually does sing and play guitar. So like definitely like he's probably like one of the reasons why I like that I play guitar. But also like the way that he learned was like he started like I think it was like maybe like high school, like around the age, like high school age. But there was no YouTube, no like none of this. So it was like just learning by ear. And I kind of like picked that up, like not only like looking at like the sheet of music, but also like be able to like have a different perspective about like, and kind of one thing that I've learned about like sheet music, it doesn't always, it's not the most like 100% accurate, but like definitely like being able to like learn music by ear, like it made me appreciate music more because of all the process of writing, recording, and all the like like all the different bar chords and like stuff like that, that goes into creating music. But like, so that was kind of like that'd be from like younger, but like probably until like later, someone that someone that I knew introduced me to like definitely got me more into like Dream Theater, and especially the classic in the classic instrumental of a Dance of Eternity, because that song is, I think Mike Portnoy was talking about that song on Drumeo, and it's like I think 138 times changes.
Wow, I believe it. That's an insane song.
Like and like that definitely made me appreciate like not only like from like a creative aspect, but also like how to translate that a song like that live,
Right.
especially some with someone like Portnoy that has, you have to think about like all these like different like especially with how big his kid is.
Oh yeah.
So think about like where everything is located.
Yeah, you're doing math playing
Yeah,
those types of songs.
I saw this live performance of that song, and it was like pretty much saying like during that performance they actually had like a orchestra play with them. It was like especially like orchestra, like the orchestra was like helping everyone trying to solve like space math, that like just on how all these like different like layers are involved.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I haven't seen the sheet music for that one before. One thing I've started to learn about, you mentioned sheet music earlier. I'm actually one another thing you and I have in common is we're both ear trained. musicians.
Yeah.
I've always liked the idea of learning how to read music, but it's always been something that's been challenging for me. Just the to this day, despite I've learned a lot about all the symbols and the different notes, the
Yeah.
rhythms they represent, and all those different things like key signatures and just even the terms, all those Italian words they use to describe music. I've tried to learn a lot of that stuff, and I've learned that the more music theory like that anyone can understand, it helps understanding these songs, these complex songs like Dance of Eternity is a great
Yeah.
example. But no amount of knowledge of it can still give that ability to just sight read and immediately play what you see on paper. I've learned that that's a totally different skill. That's like learning a language itself. Um, so I give so many props to those musicians who you can just give them a piece of paper and they can okay. That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
But I do love doing it in a very slow manner.
Yeah.
And I found a lot of empowerment in that is printing it out or going on YouTube and finding the transcript. Or on YouTube, there's also play alongs, which are cool, where it'll have the song and then it'll go page by page on the sheet music, so you can kind of it helps you follow it along better.
Yeah.
And I've learned that doing it that way, that gives you a really interesting education on whatever song you're learning. Dance of Eternity is one that I've wanted to do actually for a while now on that. So since you mentioned it, I'm going to do that. So many good songs out there.
Yeah.
Do you, are you do you do what I do where like one day you could be in the mood for one thing, like one album, and the next day it could
Yeah.
be something totally different.
Yeah. But like, especially with the music library that I grew up with, it's just all over the place. So it's like Zeppelin, Beatles, Linkin Park to Exhibit to, so it was like all over the place. So like, and it really does change from the, it really does change every day.
Same here. What you brought up Linkin Park a few times. We even talked about that. What are your favorite Linkin Park albums?
Like one that always like is on like like kind of always playing is it's always I think it's Hybrid Theory. Because like that's like where I grew up with and was what I was exposed to the most.
Yeah, me too. My next door neighbor who was close to my age, his older brother introduced Linkin Park to us, and it was Hybrid Theory. I get a lot of nostalgia listening to that album.
Yeah.
Such a that's one of those albums out there that doesn't have a bad song, right? Like a no skip album, they say. I also really like Meteora. I remember discovering that. I remember relating to a lot of the lyrics on Meteora when I first heard that. And then I became a fan of Linkin Park with those two albums, and by the time they released Minutes to Midnight in
Yeah.
'07, I believe, I was
Yeah.
already a fan of them. I remember anticipating the release of that and
Yeah.
like buying it on iTunes right when it came out.
Because I think one of those songs that was on Minutes to Midnight was also featured in Transformers.
Oh yeah, oh they did New Divide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, New Divide. That came right after that. Yeah, that was, and I remember loving that album. That's such a
Yeah.
good album, and it was so different in a lot of ways from Meteora and Hybrid Theory, but it still was very much Linkin Park. I remember loving that album. I still love that album. And I remember I always put Minutes to Midnight in the same category as The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance, because that also came out
Yeah.
within a month or two of Minutes to Midnight,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly. And back to back, I would listen to those two albums nonstop.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't even as into My Chemical Romance. I liked, I don't know if you're into them, but they had two albums before Black Parade called Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge, and then the first one was called I Brought You My Bullets, You Brought Me Your Love. Very emo, very, very emo. I remember not being as into those albums, but when Black Parade hit, I was like, this is
Yeah.
so good.
That's how I was like, that's kind of how I was introduced to them was through the Black Parade album.
Such a good album. They did such a huge tour behind that, and they developed like those costumes. They had a whole look going for them. That was pretty cool. Um, Going back to Linkin Park, they ended up doing A Thousand Suns in 2009, 2010. I liked that album a lot too.
Yeah.
And I remember I got to see them on that tour at Staples Center. That was a really good show. Yeah, Linkin Park. I've always loved Linkin Park. Have you
Yeah.
listened to any of their new stuff with Emily Armstrong?
Like I've heard like maybe like two or three songs, but besides that, like I haven't like like I have listened to like some of the songs, but like I just can't.
Yeah, it's tough for me too.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they're choosing to continue as a band. I think that that's cool, and there's a lot of fans out there who are
Yeah.
very happy about it. I will always kind of see Linkin Park as the band with Chester, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I thought some of their new stuff was good. It hasn't been something that I've been. I need to listen to that again and again.
Yeah.
But every time I hear it, it's like it sounds like a Linkin Park.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good Linkin Park song. I give them props. I would go see them live if I was given the opportunity, but I don't think I would go out of my way to like buy the concert tickets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Linkin Park. That's a rest in peace, Chester.
Yeah.
What a great group. Um, Trying to think of some other. Yeah, I never got too into hip hop, but I always liked that crossover that Linkin Park did with the guitars and the live drums with mixed with the turntable sound and the
Yeah.
samples. Totally different band. I know we're running out of time soon here, so we'll wrap this up. But I wanted to mention one more band because they do something very similar, but also very different to what Linkin Park did, where they incorporate the mixture of the live and electric drums. I'm a big fan of Radiohead.
Yeah.
You like Radiohead?
Yeah. And it's actually like to like add to this one band that I actually saw. It's actually a band that I saw February 2020.
Hmm?
And it's they opened up for Skillet. And it's a band called From Ashes to New.
Oh, okay.
And they're very similar to Linkin Park with like the whole like rap rock type of thing. But like they definitely also have a number of songs that are like definitely a lot more like heavier.
Oh, okay.
But like they definitely do have like that rap rock, but and also like some like electronic, but also like acoustic hits as well.
That's cool. What was the name of that band again?
From Masters to New.
Oh, cool. Check them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always love discovering. It's always a balance for me whenever I discover new music. It's always, should I listen to the thing that someone told me to listen to or recommended me to listen to, or should I listen to
Yeah.
something that I already know I like?
But I think that kind of like wraps up.
Yeah, this has been a great
Yeah.
talk. Thank you so much for having me on your show, Mike.
Yeah.
It's been really cool to follow your show and watch a lot of your interviews you've done over the years,
Yeah.
and it feels really great to be a part of that now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, and I'm looking forward to working together more in the future.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
you're very welcome. Thank you.
Um,